We've got a great panel here today, even if I say so myself. We've got, I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves in a second. So we've got, We've got about 55 minutes now. The idea is that we're just going to share as much insight as possible. One of LeisureNet's key phrases is turning insight into action. There's an awful lot of information and data and knowledge in this sector, but what are the key actions that we can start taking from all of this insight? And it has improved an awful lot over the 20-25 years that I've been operating in this sector. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the panel from the left to right. So Rory, would you like to just introduce yourself and your company and just give us a brief explanation of the sort of, don't give us any messages yet, just explain the sort of insight and data that you and your organisation collects. And Rory has flown in on the red eye, really, haven't you?
Yeah.
Come over from the States very recently.
So I'm Rory from Track My Gym. We go into gyms, we attach sensors to all of the equipment on a temporary basis. It's not a permanent install. And we use that data to allow the operators to see what their customers value, where there's shortages, where there's a need for more equipment, and where there's equipment that's either excess or underutilized, not popular, not adding value to customers. So essentially we help operators capacity plan and match the supply of the equipment and the floor space. Those two things go together with the... Is that a sign of overrun?
I told you I was going to keep it
be strict.
Got a little button here.
And really the idea came out of my own personal frustration of being in gyms and being unable to get on some equipment and observing other equipment not in use, asking people who worked in the industry, how do you buy equipment, and finding out that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that works somewhat similar to Stalin's 5-year plans, where the center decides what's going to get distributed. And somewhat similar to Stalin's 5-year plans, it's extremely inefficient. Millions died of starvation and there was massive excess. And the same thing's happening in the fitness industry. Huge shortages, massive oversupply, and especially as we see the huge trends that are coming our way, these are being exacerbated. So we're all about capturing essentially voice of the customer, and very quickly what we learned was data by itself is actually worthless. When we first got all of our data from the sensors, I thought, geez, I'm in a lot of trouble here. So data needs to be filtered, and then from that you get information. The information doesn't give you an answer, it gives you a question. And if you answer that question correctly, you get to an insight. And that's really the process that data has to go to get to insights, and then you're talking about taking that on to action. But data by itself is worthless. So we spent 10 years, we've done over 1,000 gyms now, over 200,000 customer surveys, and here we are today.
Brilliant, great story. I remember when we first met and you explained the concept to me, it really resonated with me personally, because I hate walking around the gym waiting for 2 or 3 bits of kit that are constantly in use. 90% of it is not being used at all. So really looking forward to hearing some of the insights you're going to share today. Roy. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, thanks Mike. So Chris Phillips, work for 4 Global. We joke that our elevator pitch, you need to lock you in at the Burj Khalifa to give it, because it's quite complex, some of the stuff that we do, but very well put by Roy in terms of converting that data into insight and actionable intelligence. So we've been around for sort of 20 odd years or so now, and predominantly started in the major events world, so delivering Olympic Games, Paralympic Games, World Cups in various sports and the like. And really it's kind of born out of the legacy side of those games, and how do you track the legacy, how do you audit the fact that you've spent all this money as a city on the games, and how do we measure that impact. So we've delivered a range of different insights and tools over the years, and over the last sort of 7 years or so we've been working hard on the Data Hub platform, which many of you are plugged into or supply data for. So we've got about 80 odd different integrations now into the Data Hub, so feeding different bits of data in. I've got to write the numbers down because they change so often, but we were about 35 million members that we're tracking at the moment, and there's about 4 billion data points that sit in that profile. And what that allows us to do is provide that insight back through a variety of tools that sit on the Data Hub platform and allow operators to sort of make some of those decisions and have that information sort of right in front of them at key times. So also from our perspective, we've been able to put some support behind some of the things that we talked about, so the energy
Yeah,
recovery.
I was going to say.
So the Energy Crisis Recovery Fund that's come through, we were able to support with the data from the sector on that, and help with Hugh and Sport England with DCMS lobbying for that, and obviously originally the National Leisure Recovery Fund as well. We drove a lot of sort of support and data into that. So I think having that collective sector-wide data is really powerful, and we now deliver that across 5 continents as well. So just come back from San Diego myself, and we were delivering the same experience out in the US. So,
excellent.
From Canada to South America to the Middle East and Australia, we're delivering that kind of insight as well. So,
Brilliant.
So yeah.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Jules.
Well, I've just come from Gloucester, so this doesn't sound as wonderful as this. But so hi everyone, I'm Jules Julianen, Business Development Director at LeisureNet, and we support operators across the sector manage and measure their customer experience through a number of platforms, proactively seeking feedback. We work with operators utilising the Net Promoter Score. And we conduct a lot of research within the industry through the Consumer Insight Panel and also Moving Communities, which we'll come on to in just a moment. And again, coming back to Mike's point earlier, it's not just about, the score or, what the current the scoring really is for operators. We work with operators to really utilise that data to then improve their overall customer experience and ensure that members stay with us for much longer than they currently do. So that's really the role that we play.
Thanks, Jules. Okay, so the first question that I'm going to ask everyone is, we're at the sector is in a state of constant flux at the moment. It's one thing after another that's challenging us. I'm really interested in what insight you can share with us about key changes that you may have noticed post-COVID, and we're now a year or 2 years into that recovery. So, Chris, I want to come to you first, if that's okay. What would you say in terms of activity, in terms of participation, people coming back, changes in activity patterns? What are the key things that you've noticed post-COVID?
Yeah, obviously the March the 23rd, I think it was, etched in everybody's brains when, from our perspective, the participation data we were collecting just fell off a cliff as everybody closed. So it was kind of a head-scratching moment for us. But then the important thing was then recovery, and not knowing when that was going to happen was the big challenge. So trying to predict when that recovery might happen and how it might happen, that was one of the biggest sort of challenges we had. And I think post-COVID, the collaborative, and it was mentioned downstairs, the collaborative nature of the sector working together, and for us, everybody sharing data with us has been a really powerful thing. I think we were keen to look at the return numbers and see where the return was coming from. There was obviously the confidence survey that we did with Moving Communities and yourselves, which indicated that there was a certain demographic that were happy to come back to certain facilities, and trying to model those into the mix was quite challenging for the analytics team, but bread and butter for those guys. So it was interesting to see that swimming made a massive return, and I'm conscious we've been talking actively about it. £1.5 billion worth of social value was generated from swimming last year. So it's a huge return, and that social value figure is the saving to the community for healthcare treatments and crime prevention and so on and so forth. So that's a big number that sits in there, and swimming came back nearly 120% higher than 2019 figures, whereas other activities generally kind of came back to around 80-85%.
Yeah.
So the general activities haven't returned as quickly as swimming has. So that collaborative nature has allowed us to sort of pull that sort of information through.
Yeah.
And I think that social value thing and just pushing on that, it's something, the UK generally for physical activity participation is generating £76 billion worth of social value. And that's across all physical activity. But that's a huge figure, and pulling that down to sort of the individualisation point of that, each individual on average is generating around £150 worth of social value. Now, one of the things that we can do, and we're trying to sort of support customers with now, is driving more physical activity to increase that social value figure. So we're finding now that social value's become a key number, and in all tenders, in most local authority KPIs, it's a figure that we need to look at. So it's been great to see that health value, I think, is one of the big things that's come out of the back of COVID as well.
Yeah.
So everybody's now understanding that health is an important factor, and those with strong cardiovascular systems, in inverted commas, survived COVID, dare we say, or didn't suffer the ailments as badly as others. So I think increasing that physical activity participation, increasing that social value side has become more prevalent following
So
COVID.
would you say that that post-COVID people are even more aware of the value of physical activity and social value it has?
Yeah, I think they are, certainly from an operator perspective, but I think from an individual perspective as well. And we're working now with health insurance companies, for example, to identify an individual health score. So we can actually put that health score on an individual, and the trip from San Diego from Ursa, very much over there, it's a health insurance market. And for the health insurance companies, it's like this would be a really useful sort of asset for us to have. But then making that individual responsible for their health and well-being, it's still a challenge, right? We don't have a high percentage penetration. We're still in the 14-15% kind of mark. So I think that's one of the challenges with being an essential service, is we don't have that penetration necessarily to the bigger population. So I think if we can change that and increase that with the health message and continue promoting that health message, we'll be in a much stronger place.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Chris. So Rory, I know when we talked last week, your business had to, the impact of COVID on your business was dramatic. You had to rethink things, restructure things. What were the key messages when you started operating again with the new business structure? What sort of things struck you as being different?
Look, the biggest thing is the trend away from cardio that we saw. Now, this is not a new trend. We started out in 2010, we put the percentage of customers' time using different categories of equipment. 2010, you're looking at about 73% of customers' time was spent using cardio. And that's steadily been falling year on year. I think 2016, I came out with a video blog saying what's killing cardio in gyms, the boutiques. Again, the data is not the answer, it's the question. So the question was, why is cardio falling year on year? That had fallen to about 43% going into COVID. Coming out of COVID, that had fallen down to 33%. It had taken a step down. So you're talking 73 down to 33. And the strength on the way up, and again cardio, so these are not new trends, these are trends that have been happening for 10 years but have been accelerated, and the question behind that is why. Obviously everyone's recognizing free weights is growing, it's the one that's growing the fastest, but resistance selectorized machines has also been growing. So you're looking at selectorized machines going up to about 26%. Free weights, now we can't measure dumbbells. If we could, the figure would be higher, about 24%. So it's really almost flipped on its head from 70% cardio, 30% strength, to the other way around, just over 30% cardio, 70% strength. The younger generation is even more. So we do a lot of work with universities. Universities are down to 20 to 30% would be high for cardio in universities. The younger generation is really driving this. And also, because we do surveys, we walk up to people, we record the gender, and we ask, what's your favorite 3 types of equipment you like to use? And when we track that and looking at female responses, there's been a dramatic decrease in females wanting to do cardio. And again, huge increases, not just, again, free weights, but also selectorized. A lot of leg. Women want to work directly the opposite of men.
Men are up there.
Men are all big upper body and the skinny little chicken legs and walking around. Women are wanting to work glutes, legs, thighs, etc. Functional, controversially, functional is a trend that is a media trend. The media writes about a lot. It's a supplier trend. The suppliers talk about it. But the industry's caught in its own echo chamber as regards to functional. We're talking to customers, measuring what they're using. We can measure sleds, TRXs, power bags, battle ropes. functions about 2% of customers' usage. And now you say that to people in the industry and they're like, oh, what are you talking about? I keep abreast with Health Club Management, Club Solutions, I go to the trade events, I see functional, but they're caught in their own echo chamber where they talk amongst themselves and they think that, I mean, people say, you're mad to tell us it's 2%.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, look, we're not listening. There's a disconnect between what the industry gets as information from what customers use to where customers aren't reading Health Club Management. They're not going to Ursa. They're on TikTok. They're on Instagram. They're watching Kim Kardashian. They're watching The Rock. They're watching Fitfluencers. If you want to see what the trends are, don't read the industry's media or go to trade events. You want to be going onto TikTok. You want to be going onto these other platforms where Fitfluencers are not showing 20 minutes of them going on a cross trainer. They're showing a lot of strength. Gymshark, go onto their Instagram feed, see who their Fitfluencers are. And there's a disconnect from where the customers are getting their information from and where the gym operators are getting their information from.
I'm going to put you on spot. That's really interesting you said that, and I'm sure there'll be some feedback from the audience about that. But why is that big change? Do you know why? Or would you like to hazard a guess as to why we've had that change from CV and it's been accentuated by COVID?
I think probably the science has changed. A lot more women have realised that actually, if you want to lose weight, doing strength burns calories longer. I think the media, Kim Kardashian, etc., that has it's more strength orientated in terms of that. I think the huge drop that we saw coming out of COVID was cardio was the first thing that you find a substitute for.
Yeah, that you can do outdoors.
Personally, I went out and bought a bike, a mountain bike, and I hated the experience of riding at home. It was cars going past, and I realised I hadn't been on a bike since I was a schoolboy, so 30 years before. But then I learned how to do it. I learned where the hills were, the squirrels. My dog loves it. And I was somebody I'm never going to cycle outside. I'd like to. It's part of my workout. I like a controlled atmosphere, controlled speed, etc. How many calories I'm going to burn. And I was always one that was for people, you've got to get outdoors. I was like, forget it. It's not going to happen. But now I'll never be on a bike in a gym again. I'm going outside. And I think people discovered walking. They discovered substitutes for cardio, the easiest. But I think also another big thing is the younger age groups have come back quicker.
Yeah, than the older ones.
And the older ones were also big users of cardio.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work in the States with YMCAs, and they have, in the mornings, massive amount of older people, and in the evenings it goes to your post-work. And they just haven't come back.
So partly it's it's a result of the demographic change, and partly it's a result of education changing what people think is best for them to do.
And then people ask me, where's this going to go? And the way that I see it is, your younger demographic that's really into strength. Well, they're going to become the 25 to 34s next, and that demographic is going to go. So people are like, all right, cardio's gone, but it's going to come back. It's just everything is a natural flow. And I'm a bit more skeptical about that because I'm looking at these younger people. I'm thinking, right, well, where are they going to go? They're not going to start doing cardio. The older people are dropping out. And as we go through this shift, I don't... Look, you can never predict the future. I would never predict. Although I saw it coming, I never would have predicted that cardio would go as low as it would and strength would go as high as it would. So you've got to be careful. But I would struggle to see cardio getting up to 73% of customers' time in my career.
Thanks, Roy. Right, Jules, I guess are missing that a bit more on that customer perspective now, which is where you come in. So what would you identify from a customer experience sort of thing? What sort of things have we seen changing?
Well, we've certainly seen a change in the NPS score over the last few years coming out of COVID. So pre-COVID, national benchmark, you'd be looking probably mid-40s, maybe 50s at best. But over the last couple of years, we've seen a decline from 50 when people came back through our Moving Communities surveys down to 30 and then 22 as of last year. I mean, we're about to start the next round of surveys, so it'll be interesting to see where it's gone. But it's interesting because everything that you guys have been talking about completely relies on people coming in and using our facilities. And although we've seen satisfaction levels remain high, NPS has dropped significantly. So we need to look at what is the experience, how can we create an experience that means people want to come back, that they want to go and use the kit, that we can add social value. And it's interesting because the conversations I've had, and obviously it's a challenging time as we all continue to say, but there's certainly a shift at the moment from, okay, operationally we've been able to get our doors back open, we can start to be functional, but there is a real focus now and emphasis on we need to create that experience, we need to do something that keeps people wanting to come back. I mean, let's face it, running on a treadmill is not fun, right? I mean, unless I didn't get the memo on that one, but... But, you know, doing some weights with your friends, it's a social environment and you're going to get more from it, not just the physical sense. So that's been the big shift that we've seen NPS decline, which is a real concern. And again, a number of reasons to take into account. You know, we're struggling from a resource perspective to actually deliver that experience. And what I would say for that, without trying to jump away to the takeaways too much, is whilst we know resources is tight and it's hard, we need to ensure that when we've got people in place in situ, that they're there to generate a return visit, they're there to create an experience, and being really clear on what that is. I love, Rory, that you were saying around, you know, data's not the answer, it asks the question. And that's such a good point to make, because so often people will go in, they'll look at the trends and they'll say, right, this is going on, but we need to take it one step further, and how we then apply that to really drive experience forwards.
I mean, if I could jump in there. So we do NPS, and we follow the question, what's your favourite three, with how busy do you find the equipment? And when we correlate people saying my favourite equipment is busy and it bothers me, the NPS goes negative. And it doesn't matter how well the gym's doing everything else. We did a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think a lot of the problem the industry has is when you say a sort of thing, what does the industry sell? And it's, positive emotions, a community and all the rest of it. Who here is familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Okay, so at the top you have self-actualization. And the industry, when it's asked what it's selling, is talking about the top. But to get there, there's certain basics that you need. And the basic for gym users is getting on the equipment. If you can't get on the equipment, you're not moving to self-actualization. You have to get it's done with breathing and eating there. And this is what from my perspective, what we're seeing is this move. The industry isn't supplying the equipment that people want to use. So now they can't get on the equipment, and it doesn't matter what else the operator's doing well. If I'm in a gym to use that piece of equipment, and you ask, am I going to recommend it to a friend or a colleague, and I spend 10 minutes, or worse still, I've walked out of a gym and cancelled my membership in the car park. Bang, I'm done.
But on that point, and you're right, and we've seen through, you know, countless research that when you have to queue and you're waiting for the kit, you're right, NPS does drop massively. People aren't going to stay, they haven't got time to hang around. But again, using that data, knowing that, to ensure that, again, if you have health and fitness coaches on the floor, it's about getting to know people, isn't it? Because if you can move people into different areas and say, look, I know you're waiting for that bit of kit, but listen, let's just spend 5 minutes doing this. I know, but in terms of, that's how we use data to ensure we can move people around, in addition to getting more kit if budgets allow.
Look, talking to staff has its place, but there's a reason that the budget model with the low staffing model is the dominant market leader across all the continents. So this is really, you know, the Paul Bedford, Melvin Hillsden mindset that the industry has, that service is all about members being spoken to, it's not a theoretical discussion anymore. I mean, low staff models dominate on all continents. So then you've got to look at what the primary driver is of value for customers. And the way I illustrate this is, if you said to you, put up a sign at the front of your gym and said, we're sorry, there's no staff on the gym floor for the next week, how many people would read that sign and say, you know what, I'm not coming to the gym for the next week. It has no value. Get in the car, go home. Put up a sign the next week, so there's no equipment on the gym floor for the next week. How many people read that sign and go home? People are on the gym floor to use the equipment. And unless you're getting that right, a staff member coming over and interacting with me and telling me, right, you can't do that, but try doing this, is not going to fill the gap.
Chris.
I was just going to say, I think one of the things that operators, and we've picked it up with the increased number of integrations that we've had to put into place to capture the participation data, is people doing more stuff out of facility, and operators actually needing to stretch out into the community. And we were all very safe, I think, before COVID in our four walls. You know, the bricks and mortar facility was it, and we knew what we could control and we knew what we could deliver. We knew what the customer journey was. We knew how we could manage it. COVID came along and everybody started to find other things, you know, the cycling, the walking, so on and so forth. And they've carried on doing a lot of that. So we're having to collect a lot more kind of wearable data, a lot more virtual data from people participating in non-facility based activity to keep these kind of social value numbers sort of allocated appropriately. So I think there's a strong move, and I think it's a clever thing for operators that are doing it, to use this data and use the trends to also reach out to the community and figure out how they can engage more people. And we're almost at a situation where a leisure facility and even a local authority operator can be an international brand. And back to the social media kind of side, you know, you can promote yourself as an international brand. And with hybrid membership mixes as well, you know, you could have members in Japan following your online workouts and be a member of Mark's Brewers Active. You know, that could really be the case. And I think that's an opportunity potentially that's been missed through COVID, because we like to go back to our bricks and mortar, and all of these things are then tangible to us. And I think the digital side is something that we've certainly found we need to integrate a lot more to and stretch us out. And it's difficult, you know, MPS is difficult on that perspective, and you know, Quest is difficult on those perspectives because it's all virtualised stuff.
And you're right, that blended approach of people's physical activity patterns, that could have an impact on NPS as well, because if the NPS is only saying, to what extent are you likely to recommend this club or centre, and they're only doing 50% of what they do in centre and the rest of it is outside, there, I think that would drive down NPS as well.
The £76 billion worth of social value, only £2.5 billion of that is leisure facility driven. You know, the rest is parks and outdoor activity and volunteering and all those kind of things. So there's a massive range of scope around physical activity that we're possibly not tapping into as much as we could.
And I think, you know, the focus so far is very much sort of in the gym, but of course customer experience is much more than a gym. It's your classes, it's the reception, it's every person that works in any facility has a role to play, and it's been very clear on what is my role, how do I contribute to the overall experience, because, you know, we've discussed this in the past, this isn't new, but retention can't just be a gym thing. And if anything, we want to signpost people and get them to engage in more variety. And we've seen, again, the more varied use of a facility somebody has, the higher their NPS score. Just sort of going back to the point earlier about if you had kit or you didn't have kit, of course you're there because you want to use something. And I completely agree with you, you know, you're not going to stay and train if you can't. But that said, there's been so much research that shows the impact of talking to people when they're in a facility and how that generates those return visits. And what we have seen, we recently conducted some research actually via our consumer insight panel, and we were looking at members who were lapsed, so hadn't attended for 3 months or more. And one of the main reasons that contributed towards their inactivity was that they wanted more support from staff, they wanted more guidance, they wanted an atmosphere. And whilst kit does play a part of that, and I'll never say it doesn't, people, if you're not budget and you do have people in your offering, then they're there to create an experience, and that needs to be measured and monitored.
And I'm going to come to the audience in a second to have a think about comments and questions. I think, have we got a roving mic at the back there that we need to use as well? Lovely, thanks. Roy, just a quick challenge to you on that. Agreed, the budget model is grown and is the dominating model, and that's for financial reasons though. If we, and bear in mind that this is public sector, if we look at the in terms of getting people who are inactive and don't usually go to the gym and aren't confident in that budget model, isn't there an argument that says the budget model is very good for those people who would exercise anyway and don't mind paying their 15, 20 quid a month even if they don't go? So it's commercially it works, but is it achieving what we want to achieve in terms of getting more people more active?
Look, I think the budget model expanded the percentage of people who join gyms. So the budget model in the first, it was stuck, whatever it was, 12%, and suddenly the budgets came and expanded that, first of all. So on that, the second thing is once you view service as the primary service is to use equipment and how available is the equipment, the fact that the budgets came in and provided more available equipment, that service level is more important to the customer than somebody talking to them. Services by definition, if I use equipment that I do not own myself, I am being sold a service.
Yeah.
So if I pay a gym operator to timeshare equipment with other customers, I'm buying a service.
Yeah.
And if you haven't bought enough of it and the service level gets too low, people are going to leave. So when the budgets came in, they expanded the market, and by providing better primary service, which is using the equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, something else I'll also say is, something I get is, right, well, look, you can tell us what the 15% that are attending the gym is, but what about the other 85%? And my thought process with that is, look, if you look at, say, restaurants, and you look at the Italian restaurant market, the Italian restaurant, how do you be most successful? You provide the best Italian restaurant experience you can provide, and that might be only 15% of the market. You don't sit there and go, oh, well, what if I had Chinese, and what if I had some Thai, and what if I had some Indian, etc., etc. So the industry's got one of the worst retention rates across the board, and it's doing a terrible job at providing the primary service. So often operators don't know what service they're selling, they don't know who the customer is, and they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
And then they compound that by saying, oh, and what about, never mind the customers, what about the other 85% that aren't our customers? Some people are never going to be the customers. I mean, my parents, I try to get them in a gym. The best I could do is my mum walk in and buy a bike for my dad to cycle at home. I mean, it's never going to get beyond a certain point. So I disagree with both of those points. I think the budgets came in and they expanded the participation rate. They didn't decrease it. And once you view the service is to use equipment, they provided a better service. We did work for LA Fitness and Fitness First just as the budgets were coming in. And we did the study, and they were kind of, right, we're going to go down a functional route and a high staff contact route. And we did the studies, and studies didn't give them the answer they were looking for. Our studies said people want free weights, they want strength, this is a trend, etc. They put in the functional stuff, no one was using it. But they thought, we'll get people using it through staff interactions and stuff. 6 months later, they went bust. So that model has some challenges.
Before I open it, I'm doing a useless job as chair here because I'm getting too interested and involved in the discussion. But the budget, I think, you said they increased participation rate. They didn't increase activity levels in the country. Okay. So the more people were gym members, but if you look at our activity levels as a population, they're still declining. So I guess that's the key. We're coming from slightly different perspectives. I'm thinking, how do we get the nation more active? You're thinking, well, what's the most successful gym?
I'm a gym. That's my little plot.
Go on, Chris, quick one.
I was just going to say, I think from the moving communities work that we did and the surveys that we did, we knew very quickly that the people who were going to return quickest were the people who were already engaged in physical activity, right?
And the budget gym members were one of the
because they're going 2 times a week, and from a social value perspective, the WHO guidelines, 150 minutes moderate activity a week, they were already smashing that. The difference between somebody generating social value at that rate is around sort of 350, 400 pounds a person. Somebody who's fairly active, so 30 to 149 minutes, they generate about 5 or 10 pounds of social value per person. So we really have this challenge to not just get people back into the gym, and even out of that 15%, there's a big chunk of those that are only sitting in that fairly active set. We need to move those people into more active more often, and almost the 75%, 80%, we're not going to get those people, as you quite rightly say. They're not. It's too intimidating an environment still.
We're not going to get them into the gym, well, especially not the budget.
But then that's the virtual side and the brand side, which maybe could encourage them to come and participate in a different way. And we can capture that from them.
I'm going to hold you there.
I've got a really great stat.
Go on then, go on. With that, and then
because I'm coming at this from a people's perspective. For those of you in the room who know me, you'll know that's truly where my passion is. So again, some research we recently conducted showed us that 67% of those that consider themselves inactive said that a warm welcome at reception or at the start of their activity, whether it's in a park or wherever, would be the difference between them remaining inactive and becoming active. So again, it's always hammer the drum for this, but it's vital that we're measuring this to understand that are we delivering that or not, because something so simple can have such the biggest impact. And I mean, we do lots of work with focus groups and various consultations, And since I've been part of LeisureNet, which, you know, isn't all that long, but I've been really amazed by the number of people who say, I'm lonely, I want to go back to the leisure centre, but I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm this, because they want somebody to welcome them when they're there. So completely hear you and the kit side of things, but actually we just need to bring it back to being people-based, if that is our offering.
Well, hang on, I'm not arguing with that point, because don't get me wrong, we don't work with budget. I've just actually flown in from Portugal. We were doing Home's Place. YMCAs are very people-orientated. And we also collect customer surveys. We walk up to people on gym floors, what do you like, not like. What we find actually is a far bigger driver of value is not actually this customer talking to staff, it's customer talking to customer.
But that's creating that culture, isn't it? And
so when
staff
I say it's friendly here, we always differentiate. Are you saying that the other people are friendly, or are you saying the staff is friendly? And look, it's correlated. If the staff are friendly, it's likely that other people are friendly. But that friendly environment and atmosphere trumps how friendly the staff are every time. It's the talking to other customers, and that is the real big driver over and above somebody saying, you know, I often get into like, how long is your contact with staff? And I train at a high premium gym. I get given a towel on my way in, etc. I have the same interaction. Training hard, yeah, keep up the good work, yeah. Boom, every time. And I think, like, how long is my interaction in a high quality service gym? I put in about 40 seconds. We know that people are using equipment for about 40 minutes per visit. So 40 seconds would be high in terms of, so again, just
but if it didn't happen,
other people.
If it didn't happen,
well, that's what happens with budgets.
But say, you know, you expect that to happen. It happens for around 40 seconds every time you go in. There's those key points that happen consistently. If it didn't happen, how would you feel?
Well, the corollary to that is, would I be willing to reduce my membership by £10 and then not talk to me?
And there you are.
And I would.
Yeah.
And if my budget's done,
And that's the
if you say to me, well, you paid £10 less, and the reception's not your side, I'd say yes, thanks.
Brilliant. That is a great conversation. That's one of the
I'll wait
best.
for lunch, Let's go.
Right then, we've got to open it up. Who would like to come in? And it can be a question. Yes, sir. Do you mind just letting us know? We've got a mic coming over. Let us know who you are, where you're from.
Hi, I'm Roland. I'm the managing director for Lambton Leisure. I've got two questions and a comment. I think the first one is around the change alternatives for cardio, and I wondered whether you've done some work around whether people go from cardio machines to outdoors, or, for example, sports courts and badminton courts. Because we found that a lot of the people who used to do cardio machine were finding them in the sports court. That's an alternative for their cardio. I just wondered whether it's something you consider.
No, we did. We added. We can add questions on, and we asked what other things do you do as well as just the gym, and a whole range of sport, yoga, etc., etc. came back. But it's not a question that we systemically ask. So we don't know. We're just measuring anonymized macro data. The question for us is, where are they going and what are they doing? And one operator wanted us to ask that question, and that was when I realized, my God, look at all of the other activities, sport, boom, 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 that people are doing, where you're never going to get to 100%. Just get it right for who your customers are.
Sorry, Roland, can I just add to that? We're sharing a report with you guys after ActiveNet. We, again, through our consumer insight panel, just conducted more research looking at facilities used, barriers, encouragement factors, etc. And what we are seeing is the percentage of people that are training outside, who they're training with, this kind of data. And that's interesting to see that from this recent data set, less are in leisure centres or private health clubs and more are heading outside. So we'll connect on that one.
I think the reason I ask is we attempted to expand our gym into one of the squash courts, and it was only then we realised where all the cardio users are gone.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think we need to consider.
But you have boutiques as well, the rise of boutiques, that's going to be pulling people out of it as well. So there's a whole range of things that have happened that have...
And then my second question, this for you, Julie. Is there an easier way of calculating social value without spending thousands of pounds? I know we have the community now.
Here's one I've rehearsed earlier. Over to you, Chris. Slippery shoulders there.
Yeah, I mean, we have a social value tool, so we work in partnership with Sheffield Hallam University, who did the original research back in 2015 for DCMS on the value of physical activity. They've subsequently redone that work 3 or 4 times now. So we embed that calculation for health costs and so on into your activity and participation data, which we collect through integration. We overlay experience and lifestyle data onto that as well, so we can get a pretty good assessment of who those people are and what their likely health conditions might be, what their deprivation looks like. We take age, gender, postcode from your data, and back to that 150 minutes of physical activity participation, we overlay that in and we generate the number for you. So we have a tool that can do that either as a modularized tool or as a one-off report. So, and that's something that sits in the Moving Communities platform, going back to the collaboration. You know, that's at a kind of high level. So if we know the age, gender and postcode of those individuals, we can get pretty accurate with that social value figure, because we know a lot more detail about that individual. If it's a head count figure, if it's a 5-side football, for example, and you've got 1 head booker and there's 9 other people who are just head count, then they have a social value calculation associated to them, but it's an averaged social value because we don't know who they are, right? So we make assumptions in the modelling as to who those people are likely to be, but the highest social value rate comes from known member participation. And I think another thing from COVID, which was really useful, was, and we kind of loved it at the time, because everybody had to register, right, to go into the gym. We needed name, postcode, we needed everything. So we had 100% clean data, although it was only 30% of what we actually needed and what we all wanted as a sector. That's relaxed a little bit more now, so swimming and gym participation, that's kind of relaxed, so we're not getting that much accurate data through. But we're not in the position we were pre-COVID, where I'm sure you're all conscious of the operators in the room, there were hundreds of sleepers on our database, and all of a sudden, bang, they started to realise they had a membership and we lost them all, and we haven't built up that sleeper base yet. It's starting to come. We can see it from non-activity in the data, but they were starting to build that non-usage base again. But we calculate those numbers for you, so to make it as easy as possible, we just plug in and let you have those numbers. And we can do that predicted social value as well, so if you're looking to, as you say, expand or invest, then we can suggest what might happen to the social value impact if you're doing that. So yeah. Catch up. Neil's sat next to you, who's going to be answering questions, so catch up with Neil in the next couple of days and he can talk you through that.
So the final one is just, I just couldn't help but jump head into that conversation going on. I'm on Julia with this one. I think, you know, there is a value to engaging with your customers. So over 2021-22, we found that our attrition was very high, and we spent time really looking at the way to change this, and we engaged with a retentions team. And what their job was to kind of go back to members after 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And we found that contact reduced the attrition from 15% to 7%. And it was really around understanding why the customers joined in the first place. People join for all kinds of reasons.
Can I just clarify? I'm not saying that staff interaction is not important. If you want to get to the top of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's your value proposition, you need to be doing everything correctly. My point is merely, if you don't get the equipment right, it doesn't matter the staff interaction. People will not be happy.
Yeah, it's part of it, isn't it?
Brilliant. Just grab the mic, please.
Thank you, David from University of Hertfordshire Sports Village. I think I've got one comment and one question. The comment is, and I think Rory's just come back to it, and the gentleman there just said it is, and we've analysed lots of data through some partnership work and we're doing with some other people. If you look at the budget model works because the length of stay they get is still enough for them to make money out of those budget gyms. What absolutely is proven is the interactions increase length of stay. So the budget model works, they've got a really successful model without those interactions, but where you do have interactions, if you've also got the right availability of kit, people stay and pay longer. So getting both things right absolutely is profitable for your business. The question is around activity levels are dropping. All the data showing that we've just done got a company that did a big analysis of our Hertfordshire for the whole county census data. So activity levels across every age group, every demographic, every ethnicity have dropped compared to 2011 levels and have dropped through active live data to pre-COVID levels. My question is why? You know, we've had all this stuff through COVID of You know, you could exercise 1 hour a day, people's activity levels increased. It's something people could do. What's happened, what's changed? Because activity levels are declining in our country.
Who wants to come in on that big question?
Well, look,
Of understanding the data, you know what's happening.
Well, in terms of understanding, a very important number is, and I can't speak for that overall, but the wiping out of sleepers has actually increased your visits per member per week number. You mentioned Pure Gym. Now, Pure Gym had said that it had risen to 1.4, so 1.4 visits per member per week. In fact, the wiping out the sleepers has led to an increase in the visits per member per week. What we're seeing is the opposite of that, in terms of operators have smaller membership bases, but the membership base that they have has a higher visit rate than what they previously had because of the sleepers being wiped out. So that's what my conversations with operators look like. Look, we don't have our same membership base back, but our attendance rate, our visits per member per week, is actually higher than it was pre-COVID. So it's a small membership base that is attending more often. As sleepers creep back into the system, that could be something that changes. But from where I'm standing and the conversations I'm having with operators, look, a lot of the work I do is not in the UK either. So, but that's the conversations that I'm having with our clients.
Brilliant. Remember to widen it up a little bit to general physical activity levels. I know we don't collect that sort of data, but have a stab at that, Chris.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to, obviously COVID, everything shut down, right? We lost loads of staff, we lost lots of volunteers, and I think there's a lot of volunteer-based activity that's been going on pre-COVID that hasn't carried on. My kids, I've got a 6 and 8-year-old, and they're in football coaching. The guys had to cut down the classes now because he just can't get the coaches on board. So I think access to some of that physical activity that they had pre-COVID has not necessarily come back. So as much as physical activity participation from a facility perspective has only come back to that kind of 80-85% for general activity, I think outside of facility as well, we're still much lower in terms of that recovery of a volunteer-based activity in the community. So I think there's something to that as well.
So we're talking rugby clubs, football clubs.
Yeah, those kind of things. I mean, the kids do martial arts and tennis, and dad's taxi drives them everywhere. But they're doing all these different sports, and they've all had to consolidate classes. So the classes have got bigger, instructors are less, and I think that's going to take a bit of time to sort of come back. There's a struggle in that.
Yeah. Jules, then?
Yeah, no, I was just really echoing what you were going to say there about recruitment, that, you know, it's tough, so, you know, things are being condensed, and that's obviously going to have an impact.
Yeah.
I think, sorry Mike, the other thing I was going to add, because when I asked the same question to the company that had done the analysis of the Hertfordshire data, the other thing they looked at has been a big drop in people walking. And when they looked at the reasons why people walked, the top 4 reasons were school commute, dropping kids at school, going to a bank, this is people that walked because they had to walk, going to the bank, going to do food shopping, going to see a doctor or a medical practitioner. And their argument is, other than that school commute, all those things people have now got into the habit of doing online. So people that weren't active before, that had to be active to do something, like they had to go and pay a check into the bank, or they had to go and see a doctor face to face, or you had to go and do your shopping face to face. You can now do all those things remotely. So I think there's a real danger from a society point of view. There's very people that were active because they had to be.
And those are likely,
no longer active.
and they're more likely to be the people that
Need
correct,
it.
they don't need to be. And as a sector, we've got to really get our heads around how can we do something to help in that area, because that's a really worrying trend.
I completely agree, and I think that ties back into what Tara was saying earlier with, you know, sort of the green hat on. If we can incorporate sustainable travel, you know, active travel into our offering, then there's an opportunity there, isn't there, as well?
Yeah. One of the observations, very quickly, I always make, I've been making this for the last 10 years, the percentage of people that walk up London tube escalators. And it was about 10% sort of 5 years ago. And I was in London last week, and I reckon it's down to 1 or 2%. So that's always a good judge for me, how many people are walking up the escalators, and probably how many people here walk up an escalator if they go to the tube. Right. Yeah, it just shows how unrepresentative we are of the general population, because it's definitely down to 1%. It's so much easier to walk up now because no one else is doing it.
I can't tell you how many comment cards I got when I worked at David Lloyd, and the car park, the owner put disabled spaces in front of the gym, the first row of disabled spaces. I had so many comment cards from people saying, I have to park one parking space.
Space back
To go on a
Come on, you come into the gym.
I know. We've got time for a couple of quick questions. Yeah, come to you. No, come to you. Go.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kathy from Doncaster Cultural and Leisure Trust. It's more a comment than a question.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we haven't really mentioned is perhaps about price, cost of living, and what impact this is having on us. I think where I work at as an operator, our recovery has been slow post-pandemic. In Doncaster, I'd say the price point is quite low. And I think we've got a lot of junior members, probably because they can't go anywhere else as well. A lot of the budget gyms won't have them. We've got our older members, but the yield is lower because they're paying less. So we haven't really recovered, and it's perhaps that middle group as well. And I think it's just something, and I know it's not as simple as all young people go to budget gyms, all older people, but I just think cost of living, it's understanding that people perhaps are making choices and are making those decisions perhaps through not going to a leisure facility for some time. They have found other options. It's evaluating actually a gym, to me is a necessity, but to other people it isn't. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And
what is your price point?
Pardon?
What is your price point?
We're £30 sort of all inclusive for an individual adult. It's 24 for older people concessions. So we're not expensive, but it's just really, I think that's something that we need to think about and factor in
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Kathy.
And I think it has a different impact in different parts of the country possibly as well. And it is where I am, just because I know it's not a particularly affluent area.
Yeah.
We've seen actually just on that point with our price rise sensitivity research that we conducted, we saw that members aged 60 plus were most sensitive to any price rises, and then typically NPS scores are higher for that, but if they're not coming back because they can't afford it, it has an impact, doesn't it? So, but no, good point.
I think also, sorry, go on.
I was just going to, we look at deprivation data and participation by deprivation by age, for example, and it's funny when the data comes in, the analyst can look at it and we can almost pick the price point that facility is at, because we see that deprivation against participation, and a David Lloyd gym is going to have a much higher or lower deprivation group, participating than a community-based facility, and we can really see that difference. And you're right, it's absolutely localised, and even localised into really small regions. Lower super output areas can compete with each other massively with a fairly similar demographic, but the price point is very different. So deprivation is a massive point.
It's true, Chris, that the recovery rates were lowest amongst the highest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. Sorry, I'm going to have to take the last question over to you, Guy. Or comment.
That's right. It follows on from Kathy's point, I think. A guy from GG Fit, we talked a bit about ex-members. We've done quite a lot with ex-members in terms of getting them back. Been interested in that, but I'm thinking more about, particularly in the room at the moment, the more public sector, about casual members and how we could do more for casual members, which I think comes onto that back from that point. Data-wise, what does the panel think we should be doing, focusing on, or how can we help the industry by focusing more on casuals?
I've got some research I could share with you. Have I mentioned that?
We've got 2-3 minutes.
So very, very quickly, we've just recently done some research, and we've seen with casual users, they want to try facilities, 3 to 4 times before they look to commit to a membership. So again, coming back to the staffing point that I know I sound like a bit of a broken record, for everyone to understand the value and the potential value when people come through our doors, we have such a great opportunity in our industry, and I feel really great to be a part of something that every time someone walks through our doors, they should always leave feeling better for it. Whether they're a casual, whether they're a full payer member, whoever they are, they're coming in for a reason. So there's a real potential there. And looping back to the price rise sensitivity research, we also saw, and it seems counterintuitive, but members or casual users were prepared to pay more on a pay-as-you-go basis compared to the sensitivity around their DD. So little bit of data there for you.
So you don't have to upgrade.
Pardon?
You don't have to upgrade them to a membership.
Not necessarily, and again, if you look at the value of someone, if someone's coming in paying for a swim and then they go and have a coffee, actually the value of that person versus someone coming in once every other week for a membership, there's all of that to take in.
But capture their details.
Even if they don't.
I can't tell you how much value we lose as a sector from tracking a casual person coming in 3 times a week who's anonymous, has that £5 to £10 social value generation. If we just know who that person is, they don't have to buy a membership, right? We just need to know their age, gender, their postcode, and they're suddenly generating £350 of social value a week. Now, that's a massive difference. Collect their data.
And whether they were doing cardio or strength.
Yeah. Mind you, there's nothing more that annoys me more if I'm in the middle of nowhere driving around, I go in for a swim and they start asking you all these questions. So you say, I just want to go in for a swim. So I blame you from now on, Chris.
It's
Yeah.
the bad, yeah.
Right, okay, 30-second takeaways. If there's one thing that you'd like the group to think about for the rest of the day and when they leave this event, what would it be, Jules?
How long have I got? Right,
30 seconds.
Okay, customer experience is not a luxury. It doesn't have to be that. So many times people say, Jules, we can't invest a day of training. It doesn't have to be as difficult or overwhelming as that. Just reach out to someone who can help, share some nuggets of information and turn that data into actionable insight for you.
Brilliant. It's like you prepared that. Thank you very much. Chris?
You may have seen it. There's a graphic floating around with Lego pieces scattered all over the place, and then they start to form themselves, and then there's a nice model at the end. That's the data sort of intelligence and the insight piece. Rory, you touched on it in your opening piece. Capture as much data as you can. Data wins arguments. If you've got the data, you can prove the case. So capture as much data as you can and use that data as actionable intelligence. We're going to repeat the same phrase, I think, but actionable insight is something that we all need to learn how to use properly.
Brilliant. Rory, last word for you.
Yeah, so we asked people how the gym could be improved, and when we consolidate 200,000 surveys, we're generally doing our studies before a refurbishment. Only 2% of people are saying upgrading the equipment would make this gym better for me. We think refurb cycles are too fast. If you guys are financially struggling, in America they do it differently. They don't do it once every 5 years. This concept is just totally blows their mind. They do 20%, 20%, 20%. It makes them far more reactive to customer trends and trying to take a 5-year bet on where you're going to be in 5 years. If you guys are struggling financially, I would be saying, don't do a whole gym refurb. Keep the cardio, find the bits that have got low usage, and reallocate the strength, the free weights, mat areas. Stretching is hugely popular, it's not expensive. And spend your money rather reallocating, because that's the customer's pain point. I can't get onto this piece of equipment, rather than let's replace a £10,000 perfectly working treadmill with a £10,000 perfectly working treadmill. That doesn't add any value, and it's negative value if that treadmill is actually surplus to requirements. So focus on the customer's pain point, get the capacity right before you replace perfectly working equipment with perfectly working equipment.
Brilliant. That's not easy to say that, Roy. Thanks very much, panel. If everyone could just show appreciation.